Welcome back, everyone, to another episode. And today we are speaking with Michelle G.I. Gardner-Ince. Michelle is a retired Air Force colonel and the founder of Above, about the business of veteran entrepreneurs. Her mission is to empower women, veterans, and minority businesses. She creates strategic and impactful opportunities, engagements, and strategic partnership with businesses for business success and supplier diversity results. She is also a LinkedIn top voice. Michelle, welcome to the show.
Man, thank you, Enrique, for having me. I'm so blessed, man. We are like-spirited. We got a passion for leadership, passion for excellence. So I couldn't imagine having this conversation with anybody but you.
Oh, thank you so much. And this has been plans for years
Years.
almost, right? And we're finally getting to have this conversation. And folks, we will be speaking about being a female leader. I couldn't have picked a better topic, but a very important thing to talk about, because I personally just feel the female leaders don't get a fair shake at what they do. And so we're going to be talking about some of that today. But before we get into that, Michelle, tell us a little bit about you.
Wow. Well, I was recently asked to describe myself, and I would say, I've always been a trailblazer, a pace setter, somebody who is even a disruptor. I have never been without a military ID card. Both of my parents are trailblazers. I only have one brother. He's a trailblazer. My father was one of the first Army Corps of Engineer officers. My mother was 1973 Army Wife of the Year. And runner-up for Military Wife of the Year. So I have been around leaders and servant leaders for a very, very long time. So when I came into the military, numerous firsts, including being the first Black female colonel in my specialty within the Air Force. I am number 2, I would say, from Tuskegee Air Force Detachment, the second female to make colonel out of that detachment in the history of the Air Force. There have only been 8 of us who have made colonel. None of us have made general. And so the timeliness of this is of this conversation is amazing, because I could tell you some stories. I'll try not to tell you all of them. But I've been a double minority most of my career. But my father said something that was very profound. And he said, never use race, color, gender as an excuse, because excellence is colorblind. And so, really my desire to succeed and win comes out of that environment of failure is not an option. But what I have learned is that perfection is oftentimes comes at a cost. So I still want to be excellent, but I've tried to loosen my grips on attempting to be a perfectionist. So I'll pause there, because you may have some questions you might want to ask.
And I love that. Excellence is colorblind. There's another thing that you have said in our conversations throughout the years that I love and I use all the time, which is leave deep footprints.
Yes,
I mean,
yes,
that's
my father gave me that.
the moment I heard you say that, I just kind of like gleamed to that, and I'm holding on, because every once in a while you'll get opportunities to come through an area. Some people will never even know you came through. Some people will say, "Oh, he kind of went through," and some people say, "No, he put some deep footprints in there." Right. And so I love that. Love that.
What's so funny about that is somebody once asked me, a military person. I said, "Oh, do you know Colonel so-and-so? He was the commander when you were at this particular, duty station." He goes, "Oh, no. I don't remember if he was there. In fact, I couldn't tell you who the commander was." I was appalled. And I told him, I said, "Let me tell you, I have been in the military at that time like 25 years. And I said, there has never been an organization that I've been the leader of that people didn't know that I was the leader. And not so much because I was walking hard. That's not what deep footprints means. It means, from my father's standpoint, of be historical, have impact, do something that nobody else has done, and they should know that you were there, and things should be better, more efficient, because you were in that organization or that you were the leader.
Absolutely. And I believe that wholeheartedly. Folks should know that you were there because the impact you left, and hopefully a positive one, because there
Yes,
are some
yes.
infamous
Well,
folks that you remember.
in full transparency, though, I tell people I have prayed to God to forgive me for the river of blood that has left behind me, because in my younger years, before I really understood that being a leader comes with accountability, right? And that you are the God holds you accountable for the lives that you impact negatively or positively as a leader. And before I came to understand that, you were going with me, uh, if you wanted to or not. I was going to drag you. I was going to beat you, not literally, but you felt like that if you didn't go where I thought we should go. And then I realized, when you involve people, right, and make them part of the vision, let their vision be part of the vision and the direction, it's better. And man, they take ownership, and all you got to do is, run interference and give them what they need to succeed. So, it took me a while to figure that out, but after I did, man, I am blessed to have impacted many people's lives, and it's one of the things I hold dearest is the mentoring. I'm a king maker, right? I'm a queen maker. I don't necessarily, people see me out front here, but in the Air Force, I was known for giving others opportunities and access, and many of them are senior executives, assistant secretaries, generals, and I'm very proud that they think I had anything to do with that. So that's juice for me. I get super excited about that.
Absolutely. And we all have had the opportunity to learn some lessons, sometimes on the backs of other people, right? It's unfortunate, but hopefully you get to the true lessons learned for a leader and have that type of impact that'll follow you. Now, talking about impact, talking about workplace and the things of that nature,
Yeah.
this question right here is it's going to open some dialogue. But how can female leaders overcome gender biases in the workplace? Because we all know, whether you want to recognize it or not, there are some. We have seen some things throughout our career. So,
Yes.
what's that?
Yes, I think that it's a perfect question, and I want to drill down a little further, because I believe, when you are a double minority, meaning a minority and female, the challenges are even greater. But how do you overcome? I don't think you can overcome those things, um, because we can't change people. The only people we can change is ourselves. And I think, or I know, it is only through mentorship and I call it doing the inside work, right? Really beginning to understand who you are, and not. And this is difficult for young leaders. I spoke about this at the Women of Color conference in Detroit earlier this year. It's tough not to feel like you must perform, right? To be performative. And what I mean by that is, I'm going to perform so that you'll like me. I'm going to perform so you'll validate me and think that I'm okay. Well, until you break the bond for the need for that, you're always going to be chasing some carrot, because the minute, somebody who's has, I call it high emotional intelligence, because that can be used positively or negatively, they move that carrot, then you've got to go chase that carrot, somewhere else, and you're never satisfied. And so really it is about being very technically competent I was blessed to work for a chief master sergeant or E9 when I was a lieutenant, and he taught me how to be technically competent. And what I mean by that is, how do you read the regulations? How do you interpret the intent of the regulation and then give direction, right? And then hold people accountable. But he also, made me understand that you must know where you want to go before you can lead people to where you want to go. So, I think a technical competency is critical, right? And that understanding what that is different for different work areas, right? But I think generally it's not the technical competencies that women are challenged with. It is understanding the environment, being environmentally aware, right? Being environmentally aware of the environment we're working in, the work environment we're working in. That's number one. And then being aware of ourselves. One of the things I've always said is that every woman leader should take acting lessons, because many of us, our face tells our emotions. And so you wonder why people are reacting to you in the way that they are, is because when you disagree with something, most of us, they can see it on our faces, right? And or if we feel discarded, dismissed, they can see it on our faces. So I think, really it's an inside job, because you can't change people's biases. But what you can do is look for one, to be technically competent, two, to really get a sense of, I accept myself, I know that I'm not perfect, to get into other groups where there are other women who are succeeding. I love peer mentorship. It's a great way to build networks, because you're helping your peers win and they help you win. And then guess what? As you rise up through the ranks, you have an automatic network of women who are supportive. Then you need mentors, right? I'm going to tell you, most of my mentors have been guys. But that's been a good thing, because it has forced me to be non-emotional, right? Things I would bring to them, they're like, why is that a big deal? Well, while that would be seen as insensitive now, it really gave me a perspective that don't take myself seriously, right? So serious that I'm offended by everything, and everything isn't personal. If there was another Black female woman in your place, your situation, they would be experiencing the same things. And I think that's, sometimes we think it's just specifically about Michelle or GI. No, it is that other person's bias against who we are, period. And we can't control other people, but we can control how we see ourselves and ourselves in the situation. So that's what I would recommend.
Yeah, wonderful recommendation there, and all of them are fitting to many scenarios that run in my head of what I've witnessed throughout my time in the military and even outside, how women execute that leadership role, and how sometimes they feel forced to play a role that's not even theirs, just because the
True.
climate. And you talk about climate, you talked about environment. So what strategies can female leaders employ to build a strong professional network in
Yes.
that climate?
This is coming from someone, and I'm going to say this. Um, uh, you know, most of my mentors were men. Most of my friends and peers were men, just because of the era I came up in. So I was taught to be non-emotional. I compartmentalize well. I put this in that box, and I'm not thinking about it, or I just disengage that. Not everybody has the ability to do that. The women that came up in my era said, you don't cry. Now it's okay for women and men to cry. Um, I was taught, you get in your car, you drive to your house or across the other side of the base, and you don't cry. And I think, when we're talking about that environment, I think, again, we have to be very cognizant that when we're dealing with with the environment, when we're dealing with these things, manage our thoughts, right? And I always say, stinking thinking, you've heard that before, but stinking thinking is the equivalent of being closed up in a room with no windows, and the HVAC system doesn't work, which means the only air you're breathing is the breath you just breathe, right? The breath you breathe, right? So, it's important to find outlets. Some people work out. I love to serve, because service is a way to exercise your leadership and to validate it if you're unsure, because there's no higher form of leadership than service. People don't have to follow you because of their paycheck or because of your position. They're following you because you know what you're talking about. So, I think, and just being engaged with other positive people, right? And people that see and believe in you. And everybody's running around, oh, I want a mentor, I want a mentor. I grow through mentoring others, because when I see people and I can help them, it helps me forget about what I'm going through, or what I've been through. So, I think a professional network can be, you know, the women's professional groups. I think it's any professional group, because I'll tell you, the people who helped me get promoted to colonel were not in my particular, military specialty. So, I always tell people, there are fans, there are people watching. And the wider you cast your net as far as your network outside of your current job, there are other ways and people have influence that can help you in your professional network. And so, whether it's conferences, whether it's, organizations, whether it's church. I love LinkedIn because you can watch people, right? You watch people, you say, oh, wow, I really like that. You'd be surprised. Everybody has a story. And so, if you ask somebody to tell you their story, how about their journey, generally they will tell you. And when once you get them to talking, what happens is now you have an opportunity to tell your story and to ask them, how can your journey be similar to theirs? I want to grow up and be like you. And you have an automatic mentor. But what I tell people is, do not go and request to meet with somebody on LinkedIn and you haven't done your homework. You shouldn't be asking them anything that you can Google. What you should be asking them is about their thought process, their strategies for winning, their strategies for how they manage their time, their strategy for building relationships. That's what you want to know.
Absolutely. And so many different reasons to connect with folks in the network space, but you do have to be careful because some of those connections, some of them are false, right? There's a false portrayal of who they really are. And then you have
True,
to look
true.
at, what are you learning?
Right.
But so important as a female leader to pursue those things. And you bring up a good point. Sometimes the climate or the structure is strictly men still to
Yeah.
today.
Yeah. True.
And sometimes you just have to go and try to find somebody that's equal, but maybe not in the same specialty as you mentioned. Now,
Yeah.
female leaders have a challenge that male leaders don't, and that is a decision to know how to balance career ambitions with their personal life and responsibilities. So, how can female leaders get to uh,
I'm
get
laughing.
to a point?
I'm laughing because uh there's male energy, this whole male energy and female energy thing, right? There are women who feel like, I've got to have that masculine energy. They're not going to believe me. They're not going to listen to me. Um, and balancing your career, is tough. Balancing, how do I maintain my femininity and still lead, is a journey. I think there's times in which you may feel like you must have that masculine energy. because the female energy won't be respected. But I don't agree. I remember I had somebody ask me who worked for me, said, "How do you get all these men to listen to you?" What do you mean by that? I really didn't understand. But it was my leadership. I think it had less to do with me being a female and more about I understood how to bring the right people to the table, right? I understood where we were going and what we needed to do, and I understood how to get the best out of people. And that's what I mean by, excellence is colorblind and genderless, that sometimes it's really more about us, right? Who we are. We've got to really dig in and do the work, like study leadership. I'm a big proponent of leadership, of studying it, and whether that's studying people's lives, that's whether reading it. But the reality is, when we're in charge, I believe in not being emotional. And there's a reason why I say that, is because there's still biases. Oh, if a woman acts emotional, does it have to do with her significant other, that time of the month, right? Or is it her hormones? All those things we deal with, and they're not going to go away, right? So that's why I believe in the way I dress is consistent, the way I make decisions is consistent, my emotionals are consistent, and that alleviates this perception of being all over the place and not being a consistent leader, and I think it builds trust. The other thing about balancing family, let me just say that, I have been blessed to have, an amazing spouse that was in the military with me. And early on, we decided we were going to be partners, right? There were going to be responsibilities he had, responsibilities I had. And because these days you can't work a full-time job and be a full-time, uh, mother or professional without help. And I think that requires from the beginning saying, look, I need you to do these things. And when you have dual income, paying for that, paying for help, right? There's no crime in if you need a nanny, if you need a housekeeper, if you need lawn care. All of these things are important because um, you can't fight battles on both fronts. You can, but it's tough. Trouble at home and trouble at work. And the more quiet and peace and it's like a refuge that you have at home, the better you can focus on the challenges that may be at work. So I think balancing, both is important. And I think the people who helped me learn that were other female leaders. They showed me. I was doing meal prep, almost, you know, 29 years ago. I was, I was taking my kids with me on travel, 29 years ago, because I saw somebody else do it, and she showed me what her strategy was, and then I could do it. And the thing that freed me, she said, Michelle, you will never be the mother your mother is. You want to be like she is, but your mother never had 7,000 people working for her. Your mother never had these kinds of work challenges. She was a teacher, great profession, but the stresses on her were not the same. So you can't do those same things. So just be the best mother you can be. And that was very liberating.
And liberating indeed. Be the woman of today. Be the
Yes,
woman of today,
yes,
right? And we could
yes,
do that
yes.
both on the male side and on the female side.
Yeah,
If you could be the leader that's required today, I think that things will work out just fine. Now, and consistency, right?
I
That's
think
required on both sides
true.
equally. You have to be consistent to be an effective leader, but there are some qualities that females bring to the table that I see often negated and
Hmm.
sometimes brushed to the side.
Hmm.
And we can't do that. But so, what are unique leadership qualities that female leaders bring to the table?
I think I think we bring empathy, right? I think we bring, you know, the diversity of thought. We see people's heart. I believe that we're collaborative, uh, more than we are competitive. Now we want to win, but I believe that our first inkling is to be collaborative. Our first instinct, I should say, is to be collaborative. I think, and know that, I want to get to know the whole person. I want to understand more about, how they think, how they feel, what their, um, what drives them. Why are they working here? What's going to make them give me extra, right? And I think we have a tendency to be, um, more nurturing, but sometimes to a fault. I remember having a conversation with, one of the vet biz lady CEOs, very successful, and she was concerned about, uh, letting somebody go. Right? She says, "Oh my God, we're like family, and I don't really want to let them go." And da da da. And I said, "Well, the question is, can you afford not to let them go?" And those tough decisions sometimes, I think, are the challenges that women have, because sometimes we are much more emotionally tied, to, people on our team. But if they're not working out, like I told her, find is there another place in the company, that they could add value? Maybe they could add value to, another, woman veteran business, owner. And so just being, I think that we don't want to hurt people. We understand that, people's lives are impacted by our decisions, and, but we it can't be to the detriment of the organization of the business.
Absolutely. There are some challenges that we face individually, right? I have to admit that I have some female qualities because that's one of those that I think of, but it's because of my love for people. My
Right.
love for people, my interest in their well-being, kind of facilitates those challenges that come up for us to make some decisions here or there. But you brought up a good point. What's the price for keeping them, right? It's just kind of like the whole training thing. Hey, what about if we, just let go of them, don't train them, and get rid of that, or how about if we keep them and don't train them? What's
Yeah.
the cost?
Yeah. Yeah.
So very important questions to ask yourself on both spectrums. But thank you for sharing those qualities. Now, organizations have a requirement. I say this to have a requirement because they really do,
Yeah.
in making sure that people develop and advance throughout their structure. But how can organizations actively support the development and advancement of female leaders? Because sometimes they get forgotten about.
Yes, I agree. Boeing. I spoke at Boeing, maybe it's been 3 or 4 years ago now, but Boeing, and I'm sure other companies have this. They have a, women in leadership, program, and where they bring senior, leaders within the company in, to talk, to, aspiring, female leaders. I think that's critical. And then they, track them and match them with mentors. There's employee resource groups. There's some female, they're veterans, they're minority, groups. But I think, assembling, affinity groups is so important, and for organizations not to, make people feel bad for participating in those groups. It's funny because one of my friend's, daughter was talking about an affinity group for a company she used to work for, and she said, "Yeah, but no, when people go, they go because they're expected to go, but nobody talks because, there's penalties when you talk." And so I think, Organizations have these groups that to support women. They've got to do that in a non-threatening, non-attribution, non-penal way, which gives people a safe zone. And I'm just going to say that we have to create a safe zone um, that allow women to deal with all of their issues. Because I think, men, even if they have working wives, they have a tendency to leave their jobs behind. Whereas women, even when we come to work, we're still thinking children, we're still thinking home, we're still thinking parent care and things that maybe men are able to compartmentalize. And so these groups allow women to have a safe zone to to be able to speak about those things. And I'll give you an example. There's a nonprofit that I co-facilitate a I call it the more senior, more um, accomplished women veteran business owners. You have to be at 1 million or more in revenue in the growth stage. And so for 2 years we've gathered 10 to 12 amazing women for a retreat, and then we have CEO roundtables that happen for the next 6 months. No other place have I seen where we can go from a woman being sad and tearing up over guilt about my daughter's graduating, and I've been so busy building this company that I feel I haven't been there, right? To do that in the same hour, go from that conversation to a conversation about I just want a contract and I've got a secure facility. And if anybody, needs to use it to go after, government contracts, I'm happy to team with you. That conversation would never happen in an all male environment. And so that's what I mean by organizations have to create a space where women can be vulnerable and talk about those personal issues, but also still address the professional issues.
I agree. There has to be a place where you can bring a life, right? We bring ourselves, but
Yes,
sometimes
good
we live
words.
life outside, and so it's just not right. It really isn't, because the person in your organization, it's a living entity, and all of the flavor that females bring. And you're right. I mean, that brain's going, and you're thinking, males are thinking, all right, what's the next task? Sometimes to our fault, because we're not thinking about these things that are external, that are impacting decisions, especially when you have a complement that's mixed,
Yeah.
and those things do come in there to play. So thank you for sharing that. Now, you mentioned a conference, you mentioned a retreat. So what do you have coming up, and how can the folks, the listening and viewing, get a hold
Mhm.
of you?
Well, LinkedIn is my jam. I tell everybody, LinkedIn is where business is done. No shade to Facebook and Instagram and Twitter. There are types of businesses that are there that want and need your capabilities. But when you're talking Fortune, 500, um, uh, you know, LinkedIn is where business is done. So, and LinkedIn has been tremendously, generous with me in naming me as a top voice in 2021. So, I love being there, and you can find me there. I started this nonprofit about the business of veteran entrepreneurs. I'm still working on that in the background because, I'm still a government employee at the Department of Veteran Affairs. But if I can ever help you, please contact me on LinkedIn every Wednesday, today, in fact. Without fail, 7 to 8 p.m., we're having crucial conversations about government contracting on my Demystifying Government Contracting LinkedIn audio event every Wednesday. Some amazing conversations with experts and other business owners and people in the small business community. So that's the best way to get me. And as I look in 2024, my goal is to have more crucial conversations about, not just small business, but how people can get out of their own way, for small business success. And a lot of that has to do with the mindset, right? It is understanding your value, understanding your market, understanding that you can't date everybody because you're going to get nobody. And being very laser focused on um, uh, who your client is and being laser focused on the value you can bring and being unapologetic about you deserve that value. My 3 words for 2024, spell the word far, because I want to go far, right? And that's focus, alignment with intention to achieve results and revenue. So you're going to see a lot of those themes in 2024. But it's just, I'm just here to serve. It is mission and ministry. I enjoy bringing clarity, bringing light, and helping people understand who their client is and how to go after it. I would say that's my strength. My strength is really business strategy. So if I can ever help you, please reach out. Thank you.
Outstanding. Well, folks, we'll have all of the links necessary for you to be able to get a hold of Michelle. But yes, she resides on LinkedIn, and as do I. And we're very happy for that. Folks, today's episode is sponsored by Fantail Services and Superpass, which are powering our website and app, Southern Sweet and Sassy Coffee, the Outlier Project, and Duco. If you've enjoyed this episode and learned something interesting about the topic covered today, make sure to subscribe and let us know by leaving a comment. And we're always looking for new ideas and guests that we can add to our show. So if you know someone or have a topic that you would like featured on the podcast or want to sponsor our show, we'd love to hear about it by emailing us at triadleadershipsolutions@gmail.com. And be sure to tune in next week for another episode where we dissect leadership from another angle. And as we like to end the show, success to you.